This show is sponsored by the Comics Shop. We hope you enjoy the show.
G'day, and welcome to episode 10 of Tuesday Chinwag. Can you believe we're into double figures with these things? It blows my mind. But before I forget, I'm Leigh Chalker, and I'm creator of Battle for Bustle. And and the end of the show, you got to like and subscribe. Okay, I got to get that in, or else I'll forget. There we go. Good on you, Sizzle. Like and subscribe. And this evening, we have as our guest, Mr. Danny Nolan. So how are you,
Hello.
mate?
I'm very good, thank you, Leigh. I am
way.
very pleased to be on, and thank you for inviting me.
Mate, super happy to have you. G'day, Spedsy. Now,
Hi, Spedsy.
mate, just for people that are, some people are familiar with the show, other people may be watching for the first time. It's a show based on 6 prompting words or questions, which are who, what, where, when, why, and how. And we chinwag about wherever those questions and words may take us. So, Danny, mate, who?
My name is Danny Nolan. I've been around for a while. I'm a writer, a journalist, local historian, a documentary producer, musician, publisher of music and print, and I kind of do all of that spasmodically, and I have for over the last 40 years.
Yeah, right. So you're a busy man.
Yeah, I have great hobbies. So, like, I'm recently retired, and I think I'm in a lucky position where I can't get bored because I've always got something to do. So
always been creative?
I think so. I've always been attracted to creative people. Where I grew up in the 70s, it was very much, we lived in a housing commission area, very much cars and skinheads were huge, lots of gangs, but I always hung around the people who like music and, like drawing or, did other things that weren't the norm. Just wasn't a big gang person. So, and I think it just went from there. And I met a lot of like-minded people growing up who are still my friends to these days. And it's great seeing, our kids now achieving far more things than we ever could. So,
Why do you think that is, mate?
Huh?
Why do you think the kids now are achieving more than what, like you were back in the late 70s and stuff? Do you think it was the gangs and that, or lack of technology?
I think lack of technology may be help, but I think it's support. I don't know. I think we learned from our parents that we could be better parents, especially where I grew up. I remember my sister telling me saying, do you reckon we're better parents than mum and dad were? And I said, oh, well, I know I'm a better father because I hug my kids, things like that. We have a close relationship, but you've got to remember how, they were brought up too. They were brought up during the war and they had different priorities. And like they were saying when we were kids, how can they be like that? And then, like I was saying to my kids, I couldn't understand some of the things they liked. Not at all. It's baffling. Now I've got my olders. My older kids are in their mid-30s, and they're saying, why do they like that stuff? It's the whole generation thing. It just flows. You learn to accept it.
I find myself wondering about the same. I never thought I would. And then slowly I guess it creeps in, doesn't it? Just little phrases or something. You're not quite sure what is going on, or whether it's a compliment or whether it's, like they're throwing something at you. It's like, what? I don't know. But
I throw it back at them like, my kids had no idea what the word grouse was. It's going, oh, that's grouse. Ace. What the hell are you talking about? I think, yeah. See, we get our own back at you kids.
Yeah, sick.
My kids don't even watch TV. They don't watch free to air. The only reason they use the television, in their own houses, is for gaming. Pretty much everything else is done on the phone or on their laptops. And me, I still love my big screen telly. I've got to have it. I've got a massive collection of DVDs and CDs because, as I tell my kids, I don't like to rent my movies or rent my music. Like on Spotify.
Yeah.
And even though I do have all the streaming services, you don't get the extras. Because, for example, Lord of the Rings, the DVD sets with all their extras. I think I watch them once a year, and that's what really got me into model making and stuff like that. That's another thing I forgot to mention. I'm actually a model maker. I do things like I'll show you later when I talk about the comics and things I've done, and because once I was all over Australia because I built a hobbit house in my backyard. It's so inspired by the Lord of the Rings. All the extras about the what they call the biggiches, the huge miniatures that they make and all that. And I built a hobbit house in my backyard, and the local paper had a look at it. And because it was the Leader Press, which is owned by Murdoch Press, it went to the Herald Sun, which was picked up by the Australian. So it was all over Australia. Got picked up by the Daily Telegraph, the Courier Mail. And then I was on Sunrise.
Did they actually have people turn up at like 4 o'clock in the morning wanting to see this Hobbit house, man?
Well, I fixed that problem because there were a lot of people who did want to have a look at it.
I wonder why.
We have this huge estate because I live at the foothills of the Dandenongs. There's a lot of old properties around here, and there's one called Como that has a botanical gardens in it, and they have open days for the CFA. So I donated to them for their children's garden about 5 years ago. So no more Hobbit Hop.
Well, mate, at least you did it, because it's funny that you mentioned the extras in The Lord of the Rings, because I must have watched that 1,000 times, and vividly in my mind, that scene where they first built Treebeard and they were in a little shed and they had to roll it down a street to the studio, and there were like 3 dudes pushing it on a skateboard and one bloke with this big staff pushing the power lines that were hanging across the street up so they could roll this thing to the studio. That blew my mind. I thought that's fantastic. I'm with you. I've watched that too, mate. Unbelievable.
Well,
I built a city once, Danny. So I'm going on record with you here. I was so inspired by science fiction when I was about 25 and 26, and I liked, I was doing comic book stuff, but liking, videos and things too. And I built out of cardboard and paint and like sculpted, like figurines to sit in the, archways and stuff, a giant city in the spare bedroom of the house that I was living in. And it took me about 3 months. I was very devoted to this city. So there's actual photos of that somewhere. I haven't thought about that in forever, but
I can relate to that.
Yeah. You just do these things, man. I totally get it. I get it, mate. I'm with you. I've done some, I used to go in there and set all the lights up and that and take photos of these. I had like stop motion and stuff. I spent hours on this thing, man.
Well, that's how you learn to do things, isn't it? Yeah, I did that. I remember when digital cameras first come out, I found out that you could take a whole heap of pictures and you could do stop animation, and we did that too. That was back in the early 2000s, and we're making film clips of just weird little things that we did with just pieces of music. So yeah, that was great. And you got your little programs that you could get out of the magazines, the computer magazines, and just stitch them all together, and all of a sudden you had this wonderful little animation. You thought, oh, I'm so proud. These days, most people can do it on their phone. Yeah.
Oh, I know. But see, that I guess that's what we got back to from earlier. I guess the times and the technology that's afforded to people now. Like carrying around bloody bigger like now they were tiny. Those cameras you used to carry around with, sit in your hand and all that. But you look at people now, they'd be like, "How did you lug that thing around?" It's like,
I think I've got a GoPro in my drawer here that I just use walking around the street. Oh no. No. I've always embraced technology. I've never been afraid of it. It's like with music too. I've never been kind of like, because I'm a child of the 60s and 70s. I'm supposed to like that music, and I was in the 80s. I was in my 20s. That's the music that defines you. I refuse to do that. I still like the music that my kids play. As long as it's guitar based, I'm happy. I don't like I won't do that.
So what did you I guess when you started your creativity and you said you hooked into like music and people were drawing and stuff, what got you into the comic book side of things, mate? Were your mates drawing comic book type stuff, or
it starts from when we were growing up. I grew up in a house full of books. My dad had a library. We were always encouraged to read, which is different from a lot of kids I grew up with. They just would not read. They just thought it was weird. That's something that we all instilled in our own children. They all love reading, and I have a massive library now in the other room. And we were also very lucky to live very close to Gordon and Gotch, who were distributors of newsagents material. And at the time, Superman comics were big, all the DC reprints from KG Murray, and we got them for nothing because they'd send them back and they'd rip off the front covers, and they just you wanted to go around and get them, you get them. So we did, and Mum and Dad never saw anything wrong with comics at all because we were reading. That's all they cared about. And I love that stuff, and we had millions and millions of them, and of course my friends liked them, so we just shared them around. And it got to the point where I thought, I can do this. So we used to just scribble, my brother and I. My brother was a big part of the creative process, my younger brother. And so what happened there? We started doing our own little pictures here and there and developed our own styles, and we always showed them to each other. But that was it. Just we'd draw caricatures of each other and things we did. And if you're good at art at school, you got to do the posters for the fates or whatever and stuff like that. So, and as we got older, our taste in comics changed. Like we'd find the underground comics, you go into the city and you go to these places that Archie and Jughead sold the bootleg records, or the Yanks called the head shops, the bong shops, where you bought the bongs and all that stuff. And they'd have the underground comics like Furry Freak Brothers and Rob Crumb stuff, Gilbert Shelton, Spain Rodriguez, all of those guys. And I just loved it because it was so rude and funny. And the funniest thing we had at the time was Mad Magazine, also a very big influence. But these things were just another level of where you could go. But having those comics to read, and then the street press in Melbourne was really big back in the 70s. You had Loose Leaks, you had Cobber. I'm trying to think what other ones they had. High Times, Loose Leaks. That was street press, and they'd have all these similar cartoonists to the American Underground, and they were all talking about dope and music and sex, and and for 13 to 15-year-old guys, whoa, this is this is the bee's knees. It was like going to R-rated movies, but you know, it was in your hand. You know, it wasn't porn. It was just different. It wasn't capes. So when we were about 18, 19, I think I was 19, he was 17, we decided to put out our own. And that would have been in early 80, I think. We sat there and we sussed it out and we worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. And it took us about 3 years to finish. And that's what that is.
Yeah, wow.
Where are we? Oh, God,
got it.
So that was what we did. Newsprint, you know, written like that.
Wow.
Yeah. And it took so long to do, and by the time it finished, we'd actually got careers. And I always remember the week it come out, I moved up to Queensland with my job for 6 months. So, and then I never got to see any of the distribution part of it. And Joe, my brother, he didn't do any of it. He just couldn't be bothered. So he said, "Oh, we're finally finished now. We've got 1,000 copies printed." And so we just went down the pub and we also lived near the Monash University and just kind of threw them out to people. This costs a fortune. We're not going to make any money out of it. So, and the funny part it was that we spent so much time on it, and when it finally printed, it was kind of like the excitement had all died out. We were proud of it, but we thought, oh, geez, we couldn't do a second one. So, and at the same time, because it had come out and took so long to do, he went into the centre of Australia because he started doing the towers for the early mobile system. Right at the very start of Optus and Telstra, and going whoop all the way up to Western Australia to just start plotting out and building the towers so they could do the whole infrastructure. And he never got back into it again. I often thought, when we come back to it, I thought, why don't we do another comic? And no, I don't want to do it. He says now they use computers, and because he was a pen and ink, bit not like Dave Dye, but he just thought you had to have some kind of computer degree to do cartoons anymore. So he just didn't do it. It was a bit sad. He was a bit of a wasted talent that way, because I never liked my drawing style. I thought it was horrible, and I could never get the character look the same in two panels, whereas he was consistent all the way, and he could draw hands. I still can't draw hands. So we went our own way. So we thought, and I look back at it now, I thought when that happened about 83, if we had been serious about it, we could have made something of it, because at the same time you had all the guys from Cyclone, Dave DeVries, what's his name, Peter Zakowski, and Gary Chandler, and Glenn Lumsden doing their stuff. You had Minotaur and alternate world comic book shops. Two of the longest running comic shops in the world had only just started there as a physical presence. What else was there? Dave Dye had just you hadn't even joined the army yet. So I was thinking, at that time, and the guys from Scar were only just starting out and doing all their stuff. So and I think there'd only been like 2 comic conventions in Australia. So it was that long ago, and it was I felt like we could have been part of that scene, but we never were, because we walked away from it.
Well, I certainly hope you look back on it now, like you were just mentioning before, that after all that work, you're a bit, okay, it's out. But do you look back on that work now that you and your brother did, and you feel pride and, you know, like...
Oh, certainly do. Especially like Joe died about 5 years ago. He chose a lifestyle that, you know, a lot of people wouldn't choose, and you know, it took him in the end. And I wanted to do a tribute to him, and so I actually did my first drawings and redid what we call the Rat Tales. That was one of the main stories for Wombat, and I'll get into that later. Now, what happened after that is he went away, didn't want to do drawing anymore. I got into music. We did, you know, it was the, you know, post-punk period where we were getting all happy and doing music. And then the jobs took over, got married, had kids, and did nothing for, I don't know, about to the 2000s, I think. I think there was a 15-year period where just decided, no, there's too much growing up to do. And then at the turn of the century, my first marriage ended, and I was a single dad with the kids. And so I worked part-time to bring them up, and I had a bit more time on my hands. So I started to write again. And during that period, I met two really important people in my life. One was James Schwanveld, who was a sculpture tattooist, and another guy was Ed Redman, who was a main instigator in the creation of during the creation of Redbubble, you know, the site where Sizzle gets his
t-shirts and stuff like that.
So I started writing stories, and I picked up a People magazine one day, and they had these stories, and I thought, this is just someone's turned a bad, dirty joke into a long form. I can do that. And so I did. I had a story in the back of my head, and I put it together, sent it in. They liked it and gave me $300 and printed it. I thought, okay, that's good.
Well done.
So I did that again, and they sent it back, said, no, don't like this. I thought, oh, is that how it works? I thought, you know, you get picked, you know, that's it, you're in. So I this is a learning curve, and I thought, oh, geez, yeah, you really do have to learn grammar a bit better. So I did it again, and once again, I got selected and got paid for it. I thought, oh, this is all right. So I might start writing instead. So, but with that, that newfound confidence was the same time I met, I joined Redbubble, which was a big creative community back then. And everybody just kind of like was very encouraging. So you say community is unity. That's where I first learned that. Nothing was rubbish, even though it was. A lot of it was rubbish, but you just saw people improve. And during that time, I got to meet a lot of people, and a lot of these people were designers, and because of that, they were all doing T-shirts and bits and pieces. And I thought, I'll do these little bits of satire and just make these silly T-shirts. And then along came this guy called Simon Cherry, who had an idea for a chess set. He made a chess set, and with this chess set, it was just, he did all the black pieces, and he got 8 people to do the white side of the board. And when he got them made, he asked me, he goes, do you reckon you could make a story out of this or do something? So I had all these pieces of chess and chess pieces, and I thought, oh yeah, that's a horse. I'll write a biography on that, and biography on that, and biography on that, and biography on that. And they seemed to like it. and it was quite successful. It sold a lot of T-shirts. Then they did a second phase where they wanted to have a chess game. So I built the chess game up out of these pieces, did a librato for it, and they seemed to like that, and that ended up going to the New York Comic Con. The art pieces as with Redbubble, and ended up being a book somewhere here. Where is it? Yeah. Ended up.
You've got a portal there, mate.
Yeah, a little book. Wow. I can't see that. Yeah, the Game of Kings it was. And yeah, so that was quite good. I don't know. You can't see it. That I can't get the camera to angles right, but it was just all nice pieces of art. Can you see that? Oh, geez.
Yeah, just hold it up a little bit, mate. Yeah, beautiful, right there.
Yeah. And that had great. And what happened during the second phase? This is where the comics start coming into it. The designers didn't want to do the action pieces, and so Simon had all these contacts with people who like doing cartoons, and some of those people, I just got to get the names of them in, I've forgotten. You may have seen one or two of them on Drink and Draw. I'm pretty sure Damien Shanahan may have been on there. Peter Fairfax, he did it too. Yep. And there were some great names. Ben Byrne, I don't know if you ever heard of Cranbourne. He did the Cranbourne comic.
I have heard of him, and I have heard of the Cranbourne comic.
I worked with him and Simon. But basically, a lot of people from that went on to do better things. Simon went on to do all the covers for Umbrella and Madman DVD releases. Steve Austin ended up drawing for 2000 AD magazine. He was a UK artist. Lily McDonald, she's got quite popular down here, and Matthew Dunn, he does album covers for Godspeed You, Black Emperor, and Augie March, and it was really good. And because they did that, I thought, I wonder if any of them will do comics with me, comic strips. So that's when I started to do short comics. I'd write them, and then 2000 AD has those short stories.
Yes, I do know too. And Dave Dice.
Well, Dave will know him because
Michael Byrne, Cranbourne.
Yeah, that should be an E on the end.
The comic.
Because
I'm a huge fan of 2000 AD, Danny. Believe me, mate. That was what I cut my teeth on, mate.
What are they? Thag's Tales? What were they?
The Thag's Tales. That Future Shocks.
Future Shock. That's it. I thought they're perfect because when I was at our Redbubble, we did these things called flash fiction, which were 150 words. There was a story with a start, a middle, and an end. They were kind of like a paragraph with a punchline. And a lot of those stories that I did, they got into, here we go. It's going to be real short.
I love seeing people's portals, mate.
Yeah, they don't like flashback. I've got stories all through these anthologies. Another one. And a lot of my comics, a story originally started as stories because they translated so well. And that's what made me 2000 AD. I thought, okay, I'm going to try 2000 AD. So I sent a few off, and they were polite and said, "No, we're not going to, we don't think these are any good." So I did the next best thing. I went to a place called Futurequake, who is also a UK publisher, but they're also a gateway to 2000 AD. A lot of people who work for 2000 AD come from Futurequake. Anyway, Futurequake were great. I did 3 stories with them, and one of them was with Dave, because I think I met Dave through a Facebook group. I don't know. I think it was an international one. Artists looking for writers or stuff like that. So I sent him this story called Nuclear Family, about a family who are in a bunker, and the telescope to tell them what had happened had broken, and when they finally went out to see if anybody was alive, they were in space because that chunk of land had broken off through the nuclear war and drifted into space. And Dave did a fantastic job of that, and they accepted that straight away. So I ended up giving that to Gary as well, and it also another publication in the US where it won an award I've got to become a finalist that was great. And Future Crake would have been, I had a few stories with Future Crake ready to be printed, but the guy who was the mainstay behind it, the editor, Dave Evans, committed suicide, and it just all fell apart. Right. That was a bit sad. That was kind of like the second suicide in 3 years that kind of affected my life, and that was so. I'm a big advocate of mental health these days because of that. You don't know how to how important it is until it affects you in some way. So anyway, getting back on, then I found out that Dave was also doing stuff for Decay, Darren Cazoyle's publication out of South Australia, and it was funny because all the stories that went to Future Quake that got published were rejected by him. Okay, that's it. So not enough for Australia, but okay for the international market. Yeah, good on you. And I had two in Decay, and Darren had this habit of sending his magazines off to Pat Mills from 2000 AD. And one of the stories he thought was absolutely fantastic was one that I did with an Argentinian artist called Carlos Angeli. And that was great. And I thought, woohoo, look at me. Pat Mills liked my story. Yeah. That's all it was. So, but that started a relationship with Carlos. And Carlos, we ended up doing another story in retro sci-fi, which is another really great story. I don't think Decay's going anymore. I think he's closed that down and he's only doing retro sci-fi. So you can see that if it wasn't for Gary starting up Reverie, I don't think there'd be a market for any of that stuff anymore. So I submitted the story with Dave and a story with Ben Michael Byrne of Cranbourne. Gary said, yeah, I'll take anything that's, with those guys. So we were in the first Reverie, and because of that, he asked me if I wanted to do a Rick McClune story. So I did Rick McClune. So I did Rick McClune number 3 with some American artist called Artworm. I don't know. I'm assuming that's an alias. I don't know anything about him. And now I'm going to do another one. I just did the check on the lettering a couple of weeks ago. So I don't know when that's coming out. That's up to Gary. So that's another one done. Yeah. Okay. And in between that, so that was the comic side of things. And while all that was happening from, the 2000 onwards, I made The Hobbit Hole. I told you I was on telly. But I also wrote a book about my travels when I was a teenager. And that is in its 4th publication now, 4th edition. That's about a novel about a holiday I had when I was a teenager with my mate Martin. And we got really drunk and stoned and did horrible things in Queensland. Not long ago, I went to live up there. I hoped I never saw anybody. But yeah, so that's cool, and that's still available through gimmicks and Amazon and a few other places. So yeah, we were quite happy. And sorry,
go ahead.
And
You're right. Go ahead.
And the thing that really happened,
independently published. Did you publish that yourself, or get someone to do it for you?
I'm selling myself. I love local history because I write for the local newspaper. I've been doing that for 15 years. When I first moved to here, so I do features about, because this area was one of the first founded after Melbourne. It was a holiday location here in Sorrento because of the heat and the smells of Melbourne. And a lot of the history is still here, either it's ruins or whatever. But there was a thing that happened about 7 years ago about where I grew up. There was a train that used to run all the way from the big, huge, where Chatston Shopping Centre is now. It's probably one of the biggest shopping centres in Australia, and goes all the way across town to La Trobe University. Now, this was built at the turn of the century, before either of those existed. And it was fantastic. It was just had a great story. It was built by John Monash, the great First World War leader and engineer. And because it was right in my backyard, I loved it. So I helped with researching and producing, and that's the Outer Circle line. There it is in DVD and Blu-ray form. Blu-ray has all the extras on it. And that was fantastic because we got to do a premiere and in the Camberwell cinema, and it went all around Australia. And I don't know why they tried to sell it to SBS, but I don't think they were interested in it or something like that. But it's still available on DVD, and that was fantastic. That was a very proud moment.
What do we got here? Great show. Awesome, Danny. Rick McClune issue 6 coming out in 6 weeks. Thank you, Mr. Della. So 6 weeks, mate, and you can add to your achievements.
I went to Home Cooked Festival to finally meet who these people were who were on this Friday Drink and Draw. And Gary is there, and he goes, "Oh, the story you sent me?" I said, "Yeah, the one you didn't like because it had the aliens at the end." And he goes, "No, the other one that you changed." Oh, okay. So, great. And so, another American artist, I think, this one. So, and of course, Mr. Killaroo, Darren Close has done the letters again, so it should be interesting. Yeah.
Do you, with your stuff, just so people know that could be interested in getting it, is it like, can they reach out to you and get copies?
I've got a blog.
I've got a blog,
and everything I've done now is free. You can get it all in digital form, unless you want to buy a physical copy. Then you can go through. I said that there's got links there. You can buy that through any of you can buy it. Fish Pond, Lulu, Dimmick, Amazon. They've all got it. If it's got an ISBN on it, they'll find it. But all my comics, because I put all my comics into anthology form. There's 2. There's it's called Art by Others, Story by Me, Volume 1 and Volume 2, and also the second part of my tribute to my brother Joe, Pius and Mole's Adventures in Rat Town. So there you go. The physical copies are on the comics site shop. There's 2 copies of Wombat there. They're priced a bit higher because they've got cultural and historical value. But any money that's made from them, I said Shane can keep for the comics. I don't want to make money from my comics. I never have. It's never been something I've been interested in. I just like to see it in print. And then I show my kids, and they go, "Oh, that's nice, Dad."
Veering into another question that we usually ask is, like, you've obviously, because your talent, for me, you love your comic books and you're writing, and I guess it's usually like a wear, but where do you go for your inspiration? Where do you find that time? You've slowed down a little bit now with your kids being more grown up. So because you've obviously got a cool, like, little office space there, looking in the background behind you and stuff too. You got lots of artwork and a spinner rack over there that you had, and some guitars and things. So is that your little domain, mate, where you go to be creative?
This is my den of iniquity, but this was. I live in a big house, and all the kids have left. We've only got one child left at home now. We Lorraine and I met. I had 3, and she had 4, but they were very young when we got together. Now the youngest is 26, and she'll be with us for a while because she's got special needs. But we've both got a studio. She's very big on quilting and knitting, and of course I like to write, and so we've got all these spare rooms. So I've got another room that's got a piano in it and the guitars, and then we've got in the next to the kitchen dining area there's my library and then another area where it's got all the music as well. So but talking about this room, one of the things you were talking about, what inspired me when I was younger, there's 2 things that really made my brain go twang when I was about 11 and also about 15. One of them's there, you can see over my left shoulder, Yellow Submarine. I absolutely was spellbound by that. Beatles, I could, nice music, but the Yellow Submarine, the movie, blew my brain. And to this day, I still can't get enough of the models and the bits and pieces. I've got 7 different types of Yellow Submarines that have come out over the years. Yeah, so I spent a long time finding all those, and little flying gloves and stuff like that. And the other was this guy here, Captain Good Vibes.
Yeah, right.
This Tony Edwards was one of the most brilliant artists. He used to write for a magazine called Tracks, a surfing magazine in the 70s. It was a companion to Ram, which is a rock music magazine. Yep. And it did these most beautiful black and white art. I just advise anybody to look up Tony Edwards' Captain Good Vibes art. It was rude, it was crude, it was disgusting, but the line work is absolutely gorgeous. I know. I've got to show you. Yeah, give you an idea. I think if I can find something that people who are his fan will already know that what he's capable of. No.
I was going to say to you just then, I had heard of Captain Good Vibes because I was quite sure Mr. Gary Challoner did a drawing of the character on a drink and draw one night, and Gary's just popped up and said, Captain Good Vibes, Essential Aussie Comics.
I love him. He doesn't do any kind of comics anymore. Hasn't done it for decades. He does paintings, and I think even if you mention Good Vibes to him, he'll just tell you to piss off. He's just it's not a part of his life he does anymore. But I couldn't get enough of that, and I wish I could draw like him, but I can't. I'm just not good enough. But just the fact that his comics were just so funny and so hilarious and well thought out, that I think that, along with the American underground comics and what they put into one page, was just, most people couldn't even. Oh, there you go. I never knew that.
Yeah.
I actually saw them. When was that? That wasn't last week's, was it?
No, probably from memory last year, maybe October, November, I think.
Well, I was saying to Shane, I think when it first started, he said, well, what did you have Captain Good Vibes as a lot of people probably wouldn't even know who he is, which is sad.
Well, I had that was my first encounter with Captain Good Vibes. So when you just brought it up then, I was like, in my mind, I'm like, I'm sure that's what Gary drew that night. We were talking about it, and then he had that question. Have you had that forever and a day, that copy of that book, mate? Because it looks in good nick.
That's his collected works. I got that about 5 years ago when I saw that it was available. I paid a lot of money for it because I thought it was worth every cent of it, and it's probably one of my favourite books, along with my Jamie Hewlett Gorillas stuff and my Gerald Scarf and Ralph Steadman books, who I'm a big fan of as well. So there you go. Lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff in here that reminds me of all that. Up above my bald head there is the front page from the paper that with the Hobbit hole.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's great, man. That sounds like you've got all bases of creativity covered, man. Like that was. I have
been so lucky. That's it. Like I did this thing of found music when in the Red Bubble days. We had a challenge. I had a group, and it was called I Am the Band, and because there was a band called Gorillas come out, and they were a virtual band. They were. Yep. There was no egos. It was just like the Archies, basically. So I tried to do that, and it was really popular. So we released a CD. I released it through my publishing company. And then I decided to release the stuff I did, which is a band called Quiet Riot, which is Quiet CHIORT, as in choir, and it was a Gregorian monk punk band. And I put it up on Bandcamp and Reverb Nation, and last year I got notification that it entered the charts again in the Melbourne alternative charts, and I thought, oh, that's cool. It was just stuff made from found sounds in my guitar, from 30 years ago that I just did again. So yeah, I've been lucky with just about everything. I've just stumbled upon things, and people who have been very generous with their time, and
It sounds like you and your brother obviously had a good bond, mate, for creativity, and like meeting the people in Redbubble, and that obviously spurred you on and kept you, like your synapses going for the creative stuff as well.
It did, I think after Wombat Comics and Joe and I going our separate ways, and 15 years of just doing nothing, it just exploded, and I was just lucky to be at the right place at the right time. The guy Ed Redmond, the guy who was the creative director of Redbubble, I'm hoping to see him again soon. He actually left Redbubble, and he does print on demand T-shirts, his own company. He's got his own places. He's got his own studio where he makes little houses. He does models of well-known buildings made out of bamboo, and recently he got Jack White from White Stripes fame, musician, Third Man Records. Yeah, he ended up doing a whole heap for him as well. It's just wonderful. I feel lucky because I'm like 2 degrees separated from a lot of famous people through somebody else, but I don't know famous people myself. I've just been lucky that way.
Oh well, mate, positive energy attracts positivity. So it's meeting those people that are like-minded and all that.
I think that's the problem too, because I make a lot of comments on things, and I think I always get taken out of context sometimes because my humor doesn't really, in the written as it is, sometimes not taken the way it's meant to, and I think I get in trouble for that a lot because people just, I don't think, understand my sense of humor. It's
always that it's I understand, because in the early days of like social media and stuff, like I was writing things that I thought were funny, and then other people didn't think so. So
No,
it
and
just,
it's funny. You thought, oh, okay, I didn't realise that. Oh, there's two ways to look at things, and mine always seemed to be the insulting way. I never meant it, but
oh,
sorry
don't
for
let
that.
it stress you.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't let it stress you. So, I guess, look, why do you keep doing it to yourself, mate? Why do you keep going back and writing and, like doing the Rick McClune comic issue 6 that's coming out in 6 weeks, your next one? Like, what is
I don't
it that
know.
just pushes you on?
All of a sudden, I'll be lying in bed and I'll just get an idea, and I'll go and write it. Like both Rick McClune's, I had that idea from nowhere to finished in less than a week, and I was so happy with it. I thought, oh, it just flows. When it happens, it flows. There's still a ton of stuff I've got that I've never published. I've got a whole heap of science fiction stories on 2 pages and 8 pages that I've never shown anybody, because I think that's the trouble with being a writer, is that you can't promise anyone success. You can't, unless you pay your artists. It's never going to see the light of day, so you can, because nobody's going to say, oh, I've got this great idea for a story to an anthology, and then, oh, okay, now we've got to try and find an artist for you and stuff like that. So I don't know. It gets a bit tricky that way. I've been lucky with people like Dave and all the other guys I've had, because they gave it a shot and they did it well. And so you don't try and push your luck and say, oh, do you want to do another one for me? No, because they've got their own style that they've got to continue on with, and their own career. So it's, if I get lucky, I get lucky. That's why it's been good with Gary. Gary will match you up with somebody. I do have one project that it's been going for about 5 years with Carlos Angelli. It's kind of halfway through. It's well into production, and that's a one-shot 24-page steampunk story. He's done a brilliant job on it, but he wants to hand color it, not via computer, but more as a watercolor. And when that's finished, I think I might publish that myself. I won't do a Kickstarter or anything, and then just sell it as it is. That's
just do, say, a couple of 100 copies and like put it out there.
That'll be like my tribute to Wombat. I think just do it again.
Yeah.
I might, if Gary's watching, hey Gary, I might hit you up for a distribution deal or something. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I can always put it in the comics shop. So Shane can carry 100 copies. But,
well, you never know. You're in the right place to ask these questions, I guess.
Yeah, true. Well, that was the other funny thing. That we were talking about the guys in Drink and Draw, and how there's a bit of a renaissance in the comic industry, and I thought it's not really a bit of a renaissance, because there are a lot of guys I've met on the way to get here. Oh, Dave, it's the I will tell you what the name of it is. It's the head of Lieutenant Captain Stanton, the biomechanical head of Lieutenant Hilary Stanton. That's the name of the comic. There you go. So take from that what you will. It's about a guy who gets shot in the head, and things turn out a little bit odd at the end. He kills a lot of people. What are you talking about? See, that's why I didn't like, we're talking about the comments. I get sidetracked.
Yeah, talking about the Renaissance.
The Renaissance, yeah. And it's great that it's come out, but I thought, hang on, no, this is kind of like, this is a second wave. This is the second tier, because there are so many people in comics at the moment who have got so big in the last 10 years in Australia. And I remember when you could just go up and talk to them, before they were even at the cons. The Tom Taylors, the Tristan Jones, the John Summer Rivers, Paul Masons, Christian Reeds, all those guys. They're only in their 40s now, and they've all had international success. So, and they started just like off everybody like yourself. So, and it just went like that so fast. See, 10 years ago, Gestalt had one comic they did themselves. Look at them now. They're international. They own, I don't know if they own, but, they're responsible for The Deep, and that's like in its third season as a cartoon show. So I'm assuming somebody's got to have some kind of IP there. So that's why it's always important to put just on your comics, creator. Written and created by Leigh Chalker. There you go. So then when somebody comes knocking on your door looking for your film rights, you go, hey, that's me. Do that.
Yes, it'll depend on who the filmmaker is. I don't know him. But
there are people in Australian comics who have done comics, who have made a lot of money from their comics, just selling it to production companies for so much. We'll hold it for 5 years. We'll have the rights. After 5 years, they go, no, we didn't do it. You've made a whole lot of money for nothing. So always remember that. There is money to be made somewhere.
I think with talking about it earlier, here's Tom McGee. Just showed The Deep on Netflix to my new housemates earlier this night. So LOL. There you go. Because what we were talking about before, like with technology, technology's, as you said, like has advanced so rapidly that like no corner of the world is essentially out of reach anymore, mate. No. It's you don't have to get on a jet plane and go and get a hotel room and hope to meet people by chance. It's you can just message them half the time and you may get lucky to get a reply. It's like but Australia's got beautiful talent, man. Such a big country that everyone's doing so many different things from all angles, and everyone's stories add to the flavor of what they're doing. We've
always punched above our weight, Australia. Well, I've made comics with the Irish, the English, Americans, Argentinians, and Australians. And that just goes to prove, and I've never left the country, except to go to New Zealand, to go to see where Lord of the Rings is made. It all goes back to that bloody DVD and the extras. Yeah, so you're absolutely correct. The world is so small now, thanks to technology. Yeah. I wouldn't have met any of these people or worked with them if it wasn't for technology. I couldn't imagine it happening.
Yeah, for sure. What Australian comics are like tickling your fancy these days, mate?
Okay, good on you. Probably not. I don't read a lot of Australian comics, mainly because I haven't read a lot of comics. I keep getting back to the classics and catching up on, because I didn't read a lot of comics, and I'm not a big fan of capes. I'm just falling in love with the artists like Neil Gaiman, Alan Moore, Brian K. Vaughan, Garth Ennis, all those guys, and all their works, because they're so good. But what have I got over here? Australian comics. Well, I'm just looking at yours. I've got yours there, and I've got Torn there, and I've got all the Rick McClunes there. Just about anything from Reverie at the moment. I like the fact that the presence was a good idea, and I'm a bit sorry that it slowed down, but I understand why it did. So that was good because it showed, like, was it Peter Wilson's story with the little aliens? I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, foes.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was one of the strangest things I've read, but I loved it because it was just, rude and silly. What else?
Mate, it was an awesome project to be part of, to be honest with you. That's how I got to meet a lot of people, doing that and being part of that project. It's, Peter Wilson's a beast. Like all of those people, there's Tony Menzies, there's Ed Kearsley's, like they're all dudes that are doing their thing and improving every day, when you look at their stuff.
Well, Dave's stuff is fantastic. He's amazing tales, and the funny part about it, when I went to Home Cooked, you always think cartoons and comics, a young person's sport, but Dave is older than me, and I met the guy who wrote one of his first comics with, and also did a lot of the work with Matt Kime for The Cursed, which is another fantastic comic. Cranbourne, as I said, I love that series. It's so well drawn. But Roger Stinson, geez, he must be 70, and he's editing work and writing stories.
Well, have you ever read the Roger Stinson and Dave Dye comic book Cut Down?
Yeah, I've got it,
mate. I read that a couple of weeks ago. That was awesome, man, that comic book. And so is Time Fault. I recommend both of those two, like those two comic books. And Dave's a champion bloke too. So it's,
I've met Dave a few times. His best work is probably still yet to come, but that Anzac book, I've got it in the landscape version because he redid it as a portrait. I've got a signed copy of that, and I love that. I show that to everybody. Look, this is how you do a narrative. This is history. This is more fun than reading a book. This actually shows you what's happened. Because I didn't realise that he went over there. He's been to Gallipoli a couple of times. Actually sat there and drew maps, and got the feel of it, and that all comes out in the book. It's lovely stuff.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing, man. Like that's a great story about Dave's book, because this, and the thing that I love about comic books, and it's a weird thing, that when it's out, no one that's been involved in the creation sees it like, oh, it's out, and thanks very much, they devour it, put it there. When's your next one coming out? But they never sort of realize, how much work and effort and thought and strength, of will I, should I keep doing it? Will I do it? That sort of thing, it's comic books are great like that, man. And, to hear that story of Dave traveling overseas to, Gallipoli and that to, study the maps and all that blew my mind. I have heard that story before. It was an awesome story. And it is tops, Mr. Challoner. It's a great comic. Yeah.
I reckon you can see the money and the effort in it just by the sheer detail he's got to, and so passionate about it too. And while I was at Home Cooked, I got got a little addendum, a little 22-page comic that you can add to it. I had to get that to add to it. When we were,
well, I'm jealous that you own that, a signed copy of Dave Dye's work. Like,
I think he'll sign it for anyone. You've got to come down here. You're up in the Never Never, up there in Townsville. Jeez.
Oh, I'm pretty close to there. Yeah.
Well, Gary said it should be in every school. I actually asked Dave if it was at the Australian War Museum, because I was up there last week, and I thought, oh, geez, wonder if he's got it up here. I think he did send a few copies, because I can imagine having a stack of 50 of them sitting on the the exit through the gift shop there, and people just go, yep, walking away with it, because
100%.
Huh?
No, well, he got nominated for. Oh, I'm 100% with you, mate. Like it should
Yeah,
be
he
in
was got
the
elected for that.
memorial
That's right.
down in Canberra and stuff like that.
Hmm.
It's a great comic. It's
Yeah.
it is bloody brilliant. So, like, I guess, what would you say to someone, Danny, like that? Is coming into comic books and stuff like that, mate. Like, what would you say is, I guess, a piece of advice for them, mate? Like from you in your experience on your travels.
I really don't know. I've just stumbled through everything. I have just been lucky to meet people. But I suppose the main one is if you've got a passion, stick to it. That's what I tell my kids. Like today, I did another thing that was indirectly because my son's in a band and he's got a new single coming out next week. It's quite a popular band in Melbourne. And so I sat here with my movie maker and made promos out of the new video, just stuff like that. And I'd never done that before, but my passion was, my love for my son and his music. So I did that. So don't just stick to one thing, just give everything a try. It can't hurt.
But, you're 100% right.
Because I can't give anybody advice because I've just been so lucky. Like, I live very close to a comic shop that is probably the oldest comic shop in Australia, perhaps maybe even the world, alternate worlds. And the owners there are fantastic. And Joe is writing a be-all and end-all book, Joe Italiano, about my life in comics. And if anybody's going to be able to, write a good history, because most of the histories, I've got John Ryan's panel to panel here, they all end about 1975. And there's no really distinct thing happening. I know Daniel Best is doing one on Cyclone, and I have great faith that he'll do a good job of it because his job on Len Lawson and Newton Comics, I own both of those, are brilliant and fantastic. And I actually gave both copies to Joe as part of the history he's doing. But now I'm helping him in a small little way with that. So my love of history is helping someone do a history book. So finding things that he didn't know about, like defunct publishers like Local Act, who were big in the early 2000s. That
I remember Local Act.
There you go.
I do remember. Believe it or not, many eons ago, because the Battle for Bustle, it's out now, is like the third version. I did a really weird version back in the early 2000s, and sent it off to Local Act, and he was a nice dude, and gave some advice, and sort of set me on this 20-year path. But I do remember Local Act very well, mate. So. Yeah, they do have a place for sure. They had a lot of books out at the time.
They did, and people who come from there with Simon Cherry and Ben Michael Byrne and Damien Shanahan, who did Pizza Man and all those guys. Yeah, I sent 3 scripts to him, but that was before I knew what a script was. I just sent him, story outlines. I thought, oh, these are any good for a story. He said,
dude, I was just drawing complete stream of conscience on a conscious on paid like A3 paper and like drawing word bubbles and writing the script as I was going, and just like sending photocopies off to this dude, Ben. And I don't know what he was thinking at the time, like, what is this madness? But I've still got those pages here. I found some the other day and they're funny. It's like, it's very unusual, but he was a good dude.
I believe that's the only way to learn. Experience is something you get 10 seconds after you need it, basically. And it's true. You stand there and go, well, and usually most people are polite. They go, instead of doing it this way, why don't you try this way? And you go, oh, okay. And then, about a year later, it clicks to go, oh, okay. That's because you don't do it that way. You do it his way. Yeah. No, that's fine. Like I remember the first scripts I wrote. You say a man jumps off first panel establishing a man jumps off a bridge and rolls 3 times and grabs his gun and aims and shoots, and then says 15 lines of text. And I thought, that's not one panel. You just you think, oh, an artist will do that, won't he? No. And you realise that, oh no, now I've got to break things down, and that's how it works.
Work as you learn, mate, I guess. Like learn as you work sort of thing. I guess that's the only way to get started, mate, is just to pick up a pencil and a bloody piece of paper and just have a go at it. So no other way.
I still reckon with a lot of guys, if I do have to have one bit of advice, I wish there was more editors, good editors for people. You can't just write a comic, draw a comic, and then get it printed, because you need help. There's always going to be someone who's going to help you with your phrasing. Phrasing, yeah. I probably did that today. Phrasing and what works and what doesn't work. It's always good to have someone else's perspective. You can't start and finish, and just say, boom, I'm going to go and print this now, because you'll regret it, because you'll look back at it and go, oops, I made so many mistakes. So I'd like to see more editors, but they're probably pretty unappreciated a lot. So we'll see what happens there. But I think that would be the most important thing. If I could advise anybody, always let someone look at your work first, and don't be precious about it. Just because you did it doesn't make it fantastic. Someone's always going to tell you where you've made a mistake, and especially proofreading. Geez, the best thing that I've ever had, especially in my journalist work, because I have to do 800,000 words a month, for a story, a feature, or probably two articles every 3 months, maybe, is having it read back to me and Grammarly, because if I try and find my own mistake, I just read over them all the time and just miss the same thing. So that's why I always use Grammarly and use the function on PDFs and words that read back to you. So there you go. You're lucky. I used to get I have 2 children who one works for the government in Canberra, and another one is a teacher at Deakin University. Both of them know how to do report writing and proofreading. I give them my stuff, and they never do it for me. I'm not doing this. That's just, it could be bothered. So I wish I had somebody who could do that for me too. So until that now, the technology, the read back to your function on Word is the best thing in the world, because then all of a sudden you see, oh, that doesn't sound right. So if it doesn't sound right to you, you know that you've got to correct it. So.
Yeah, I'm with Peter Lane there with his comment that his wife edits his work, because I'm very lucky that I work with Tam on Battle for Bustle, and she edits an awful lot, and I'm currently getting a big list of things that I've got to have a little closer look at over the next few days, mate. So I do think it's very important for editing, and you're right, mate. Just even getting someone else to have a look at your comic book before it's printed has meant more the merrier, really. It's like that's one thing about this comics community that I've learned from, mate. Not only just the creative energy, but I guess as you get to know people and you become friends with them, you get to have a trust of and a confidence in, hey, I'm not going to be precious. would you like to read this and let me know what you think? Or would you like to have a look at that sort of thing? And I've found that invaluable, man, to be honest with you, because like I've said, I live in Townsville, which is very far north Queensland, and there's not a lot of people that are like-minded in terms of comics up here, and there's no conventions, and it's a long way from things. And, you know, like, you can get stuck into your own little rut of, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm going to do it. And, you know, it's good just to have advice and people you can belt ideas with. And that, what's that? Sizzle, bring that up again. Dave Dye, proofread, and has a proofreader's guide available as a PDF. I have seen that on Facebook pop up.
I haven't. I've met the man, and I think he was a lovely man. And when I saw who he worked with, I thought, geez, he's obviously a very well-respected man too. So I'm going to have to chase it up now. You'll have to send me a link, Dave, on that one. Because,
it was, I think, maybe a week ago, mate, that he was putting that up and letting everyone know that it was still available. I'm pretty sure I saw that because, I've read enough of Mr. Stitson's work now to know I like his writing, mate, and definitely add Dave Dye into the mix, mate, and it's definitely worth having a look at those comic books. So, you know, nothing wrong with that at all. But I guess where are we at now? Where are we at, Danny? We don't know
I didn't do a Spedsy and write down the.
No, that's all right. Because see, I'm an egghead, and I always write the things down, even though I say them all the time. It's like I like to just go through and double check everything and make sure that everything's in order. But, mate, Chinwag, mate, what else is on your mind?
What else is on my mind? Well, this year, I retired. This year has been the year that I have stopped suffering fools. I remember on New Year's Day we were sitting at a party, first party, New Year's Eve party we've been to in ages, the wife and I, and you know, a whole heap of friends, thinking, I wonder if this world, you know, year's going to be any different from any other. You know, I feel like last year's a good year. You're finally getting out of COVID. In February, we decided that we were going to take a holiday up to Port Campbell. No, not Port Campbell, Port Douglas. You know, that had been cancelled twice because of COVID. You know, it had been sitting there. It had finally been booked in. And just before we went, I had a routine ultrasound because when you're our age, you're my age, every time you go to the doctors, they go, they're elevated levels. You've got to go here because apparently it's all free. So the doctors make a fortune. So I went and had that, went back to work, and I get all these letters saying, I need to see you right now. Oh, fantastic. And then I get told that I had cancer of the kidney. So, okay. I said, we've got to go and have all these tests. So I go back to work and I say, hey, guys, I've got to have all these tests. They've found this great big huge lump on my kidney. And they go, it's probably the wrong day to tell you that the company is closing down in Australia. We've all been made redundant. And I'm like, okay. So the wife come home from work and I said, guess what happened to me today? and I told her and she went, oh, no. And I said, yeah, let's go on a holiday. So I went on a holiday. And when I got back from holiday, I went and had the operation. That was all a success. Work closed down and we were made redundant, but we'd been there a long time. So there was only 4 of us. I was lucky because, the other 2 guys I worked for were Spanish nationals. They actually had to leave the country. Poor buggers, and they'd made a great life here. 7 years they'd been here. And so I thought, well, what am I going to do? I thought, I'm going to retire. So I had a nice holiday, a successful operation that was, people talk about the public health system. From the moment that I found out, they said, we can do this operation next week. I said, I'm going on holidays. And they said, okay, we'll put it off till when you come back from holidays. I said, good. So, I was nice and relaxed, had the operation, because I had the operation recovery, I missed all of the mess that involved closing the company down, but got all the benefits. And since June, I've just kind of settled into being, Mr. Relaxo,
Yeah.
trying to figure out what I'm going to do. So, how's your life? So far, it's been good.
Yeah. Well, so what do you? I guess you're obviously going to let loose with a bit of creativity there, mate. I would say.
I'm really excited that the Sun's releasing this new song and the video. That's been going for a while. I'd like to be involved in that, but he doesn't want me to be involved in that because, I'm an old man. But I'd still like to tell everybody, shout it from the rooftops. But there's a lot of gardening to do. And hopefully I'll get some of these stories. Well, thanks to Gary, there is another comic coming out in 6 weeks. Rick McClune, number 6. Digging Up the Past. Involves a bit of subterfuge and maybe a couple of dinosaurs. Not live ones, dead ones. And hopefully we'll see this the biomechanical head of Captain Hilary Stanton come out, and then that'll be my piece to resistance. If that's as good as it is, I think I might end it on that. just leave it at that. So, other than that, if anybody wants any of my stuff and read it for free, you can download it from my blog, my website, which is DVN61. Just type that into Google, and it'll come up as the blog of Danny Nolan, and it's got a million things, and it's got my news articles of local history. It's got my obsession with cartoon bands, the history of my life in a band, and all my bits and pieces of comics and stuff, and reviews. I do reviews of comics. There's a link there to all my comic scripts too that have been published. So if you are an aspiring writer and want to know how to lay out comics that have been published, it mightn't be the best, guide, but they've all been published, so you can, get an idea how layout works and maybe flow and stuff like that. So it's all free.
Well, hopefully there should be people out there that try and learn from every one they can, mate. You know what I mean? Like, information is, like, very valuable, mate. So
how did you learn how to write comics? Did you have any idea that it was in script form? I didn't. I had no idea until probably about 2010, I reckon. Before
I guess I always did. I wrote short stories like yourself, and like was drawing images to go with the short stories, and just I think slowly over time I started interweaving the two. But it wasn't really until I guess as with Local Act, where I was honestly like just sitting down with an A3 piece of paper and just like, I want it to do this, and drawing it in great detail and sketching on that, and then having, the word bubbles laid out in the artwork, and then writing the script as I was going. And then that's page 1. This is page 2. And then I guess I got a bit more savvy with, hey, there's got to be a bit of an easier way, or what's the way, like, and the dude, I forget his name from Local Act, was like, I've got a script. It would have been. Yeah, and I was a bit like, a script? What's this thing called a script? And, then I sat down, and I guess back when you used to buy trade paperbacks and stuff of collected stories, they used to have like 10 or 12 pages in the back, mate, of like comics in layout form and pencils, and then they'd have a page or two of the script. So I went on this mad, like, like I can just scratching out bits and pieces of every bit of info I could, until I worked out, okay, page 1, panel 1, and doing it that way. And then just slowly, strangely enough, over time, have reverted back
The other way.
That's how I did it, and thank God I've got Tamara that comes along and goes like, man, like let's sit down and like really knuckle this down and tighten this up, and that's where comes back to like an editor, someone else that can look over your artwork, a co-writer with Tamara, like has helped me get to here, but I'm always want to continue learning, mate, because it's a passion for me now. And like much, I guess, like yourself, you at the time you think, yeah, it's printed and you do your marketing thing, but then it's not until you come back where you take a moment away to reflect and you go like, wow, I'm really enjoying the process. I'm enjoying the people I meet, like being part of a community and, like learning and stuff. So I guess I'm still in a phase of evolution, I guess, Danny, in a weird way. So I'd be a terrible teacher teaching people about comic books. I tell you, it's like, how do you do it? I'm not sure.
That's I think the hardest part I have is with teaching is being patient. If they don't get it right the first time, I thought, oh no. Whereas I'd ask every question under the book. I'd probably be the worst student rather than the worst teacher. Oh, yeah. Because I just asked so many questions, but I'm also lucky that I just met a lot of good people who are willing to share and help me along the way.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, you've been good with your creativity. So, mate, before I wrap up start rolling down into the wrap up of the show, question: what do you think of where Australian comics is at now, like at the moment? Do you think it's strong? Do you think it's work in progress? What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's coming along, but there still seems to be like different sections and different groups, and people don't know what other people are doing. Like I'm surprised. I'll say this to Sizzle. I'm still surprised that you haven't had Steve Carter and Antoinette Ryder on Drink and Draw yet. They're royalty. There's so many people. I know you've got to work through them, but I don't think people appreciate the history of Australian comics. I know that the guys in Sizzle and Spedsy, it's good to see people like Gary Challoner and Dave DeRise and Glenn Lumsden and all those guys, getting prominent of place because they were the guys who kind of kick-started the new age. But there's a lot of things that people don't know. Like as you said, one of the major players in comics at the moment is Sizzle. 3 years ago, he didn't even know there was an independent scene. So, I think people need to not only get to meet others, but learn about the past. Like Sizzle, one of we've got here, Fatsville Comic. I've been in 2 of those. They're probably legends, and they're in your backyard. Did he even know they existed? Just have a look around and see. And if you know your history, we have a better appreciation of what they went through, and how to maybe proceed a little bit further. And I think with Sizzle and with what's happening with Rob and yourself promoting, it can only be healthy. It was never like this, when I was young and starting out. As I said at the start of the show, when I started out, at the same time you had all these comic book legends, in different things, in comic book shops and in creators and publications. We're all starting at the same time, but they're all running independent. Now it seems like everyone's a unit, but I still reckon it could be probably a bigger unit. It's, you know, you could draw more people into the fold. Don't just you know, I think that's big enough. This is all we can encompass at the moment. I think we still need to draw more people in and encourage more people.
Well, mate, I can tell you from like being someone that is a community member of the Australian comics and stuff, and just with my time with ComX is for me as an artist and a creator, it's been so helpful and awesome, man. And, you know, like just to be part of it and meet people that I never thought I would, and have friends that I otherwise would never have had the opportunity to meet, man. So it's positivity really is here. And if comics an interest or creating, writing of all facets, you know, like editing through to penciling, inking, like collectors, you know, all of those sorts of things, they're all important, mate, and they're all inclusive. So you know, hopefully we can keep the vibes happening, mate, and you know, like get more and more people to come and you know, like be part of Australian comic books, mate. You know,
well, you're doing fine. Well, you've got you in the northern in Townsville, and you've got Laura Marshall in Perth. So, you know, you're this big, you know, encompassing and everybody in between. So it's good to see. And I would also like to say that talking to you, it reminds me of, I watched this show on TV. It's called Arms Brush with Fame. And you kind of like do that. You draw things out of people. And I've really enjoyed this. Now, I'm expecting to see a picture of me somewhere. Do I close my eyes for 30 seconds and you're going to pull it
out? No, this is one of the only times on a live stream you'll see me not draw, mate. So I think that's why you know.
No, you've got a great presence.
I've always enjoyed talking to people, Danny. And, you know, it's a great, to be honest with you, man, it's a great pleasure, you know, doing this show, man. So I'm going to keep doing Chinwag to meet people like yourself and everyone else that comes on in the past and the future as often as I can, man, and for as long as I can, because yeah, like I love Australian comics too, mate, and like grew up on history and the history of everything, you know, from going straight back, you know, like to the early days through to the 60s, 70s, 80s, the whole lot. One of my goals would be to get people that were interested from those eras, mate, you know, like 50s and 60s and 70s, as far back as I could get, to come on and have a chinwag and tell us about the stories and how hard it was for them, you know, like to get their comic books out there and what the environment was like at the time, you know, because, you know, like, you know, even talking to some of the dudes in the 90s, mate, you know, like with their printing presses, you know, like to now it's an email, boom, off you go, you know, you've done it on, you know, like 2 days later a box turns up with your comic books. It's a crazy, you know, like so much happening, you know, and does happen, but it's a beautiful thing, man. But Danny, I'd thank you very much for the very kind words tonight, mate, and thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure, man, because yeah, tonight it has. I've learned a lot about you, mate, and it's I certainly hope that you know, like with your enthusiasm and your writing, you keep going, mate, and keep digging into the community, mate. And exactly, Mr. Challoner, time for more comics, mate. And mate, on that note, I'll wind the show down. And thank you, Peter. Now, tomorrow night we have Shane and Lauren Armstrong, martial arts, Lady Rattus, as is known amongst the comics community, and they're kicking off their Oz Comics show. So that's at 7:30 Queensland time on the Comics Network. Friday night drink and draw. The main character is Judge Dredd, and the special guest that evening is Mr. Gary Della from Publications. So that's Friday night at 8 o'clock. And mate, I'd just like to ask you to like and subscribe the channels, because, you know, the more people we get, you know, the more reach we can have to tell people stories and stuff. And
like and subscribe, or else I will write horrible comments under your I don't know, YouTube comments or something like that. I don't know.
Somewhere. If they turn up, you'll know. All right. So thank you very much, Danny. And look, everyone, next Tuesday night is Mr. Sean Keenan of Comics to Movies. So he'll be on the Chinwag for episode 11. And everyone, remember, community is unity. Keep doing comics.
Thank you. Bye.
This show is sponsored by the Comics Shop. Check out comics.cx for all things comics and find out what comics is all about. We hope you enjoyed the show.